It is time for encouragement. And if you're anything like me, you have spent a lot of time this week thinking about Elijah and mushrooms. So I'm going to talk about that. I normally don't read things on the videos here just because people's attention span is so short. And years ago, back in the first century, the students used to sit around and listen to the rabbi as he taught for hours and hours and hours. And they'd just sit there as long as he wanted them to. But that's because they couldn't scroll up. You know what I mean? So I try to keep it real short if I read something. But I am going to read just two passages today from the book of 1 Kings. And we'll skip, and here's what's happened. Elijah just had the greatest victory of his life. It was a war between him and the prophets of Baal. It was a war between light and darkness, between God and Satan. And spoiler alert, God won. It was a massive win. Then Jezebel sends a note to Elijah, tells him by tomorrow at this time, you're dead. Elijah got scared, ran away, sat in a cave. That's where we are. 1 Kings 19, 9 and 10. Then he came there to the cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? He knew. And he said, I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the sons of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, and torn down thine altars, and killed thy prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they're trying to kill me. See, here's what's happened. Elijah has sunk down into this place where he feels isolated and alone and deserted, and nobody understands my problem because nobody's ever been here before. And it just brought all of this self-pity out of it. I think we've all been there and can identify with that. As I was making some notes on this week, all of a sudden, just out of the blue, I thought about mushrooms. And I don't know why. I thought, well, that's kind of like mushrooms. And I don't know anything about mushrooms. I don't even care about mushrooms. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they could be a fungus. So I haven't studied mushrooms. I have no information about mushrooms. I don't even smoke. But as I looked them up, I discovered that mushrooms thrive in an environment that is dark and damp. And you know why? Because they get their energy from things that are decomposing. You can get a lot of energy from things that are decomposing. Like if you're mad at somebody, you get a lot of energy from that. If it's self-pity, depression, revenge, jealousy, all kinds of things that are just rot, you get a lot of energy from that. And that's how mushrooms grow and thrive in that kind of environment. But the other plants, they get their energy from the sun. There are a couple of ways that you can look at your situation. You can say, nobody can identify with this. Nobody's ever been here before, so how could they possibly understand my situation? I mean, maybe you've got something growing out of your neck that looks like a Buick. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. How could they identify with that? That's just weird. They'll say, yeah, I've seen a Chevy, but not a Buick. Nobody can, this is the weirdest thing. How could you explain this to people? And so you can feel isolated, and therefore you can get angry at people because they can't touch this place where you are. You feel deserted of God, and you just sit in the darkness. But there's another way you can look at it. You can say, instead of nobody can identify this, you can say everybody can identify this who has trusted God and seen God come through as their deliverer. The one thing that you have in common, no matter what your situation is, the one thing that you have in common with other people who have been delivered from God is that by God, is that they have been in a situation where they were hopeless in and of themselves. I saw a story this week about this lady whose husband had a stroke, and they did this brain x-ray thing, and you could see right there on the screen where the brain had been affected, and they said he's not going to walk, he's not going to talk, just not going to ever be the same. And she said, you know what, I don't believe that report. And she said, I'm going to believe what God says. See, you might not be able to identify with that situation, but you can identify with the fact that she was over her head on her own. You can identify with the fact that God can rescue you from whatever the situation is. You move out of the darkness where you feel isolated, and you move out into the sunshine where the Word of God is there, and the optimism and the promises of God are there to deliver you out of whatever situation that you're in. There's a verse in 1 John that says, "For whoever is born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith." Hey, look, I hope this has been encouraging to you. Be sure to share this with your friends. And look, if you missed our webinar on Friday night, the Finding Peace webinar, we do have the replay available to you. I will put the link to that right here in the chat. Or actually, you just email me, or you can private message me and just say, Finding Peace webinar, I will need your email address so I can send it to you. Or you can just email me, matt@matt4.com, say the same thing, and I'll get it out to you. Hope you have an awesome day. Hope you enjoyed the little video. And as always, you're welcome.